Welcome. I'm Michael A. Delitala, humbled author of the Revisionist and Quality by Delitala book series. Today's training is the fundamentals or the foundation of root cause analysis. I would speculate with you, dear trainee, that you perform some level of root cause analysis in your life every day for any little problem or nuance that comes your way. More on that later. What qualifies me, Michael A. Delitala, to put out a training video like this? Well, I'm extremely experienced in the pharmaceutical industry with over 3 decades as mostly a quality systems and compliance guy. I have a dedicated book on the subject, Quality by Delitala, Volume 3, which is Root Cause Analysis. Let me pull that up for you right now. Here it is. There we go. You can see it. At a large pharma company, the global program owner for Deviation one day just decided he wasn't going to be the global program owner any longer. As there was a need, I volunteered because of my love for deviations, which you can read about in many of the Quality by Daily Tele volumes. Owning the deviation program means that you also own the root cause analysis process. And at this company, there was a very large need to catch up the entirety of the company on training for root cause analysis. And so, in very short order of volunteering, I found that I was holding RCA training all over the planet with classes of 40 to 100 trainees. And even with that volume, it took an entire year to catch the company up on RCA. Because after all, you need training on RCA in order to gain access to deviations, product complaints, things of this nature. So in so doing, in that one company, I clocked training greater than 1,000 trainees. And in my total career of 30 years now, I estimate that I've trained over 10,000 staff on the process of root cause analysis. When I attend conferences, sometimes people walk up to me and say, "You probably don't remember me, but I attended one of your RCA trainings, and it stands as one of the best trainings that I've ever been a part of." By the way, all of the material again presented here today can be found in this book, which you can find on Amazon. It's for the meagerly price of $12.99. It's actually really special. It has this training contained with it. It has philosophical points of view on how to manage your investigations, an SOP for root cause analysis. And the thing that makes this book unique is that it has a step-by-step quick reference guide for how you know one step of the process is complete when you're doing an RCA, and then you can move on to the next step of the process. I would submit to you that that is very unique in the industry, and that's the beauty of my Quality by Daily Telebooks. They give you the answer. All right. So here's today's agenda. If we were holding an actual course, I would welcome you and have you introduce yourself. I would say something to the effect of note the word fundamentals. Today, you'll receive the foundation, the basics of root cause analysis. I like to tell every class that you will not be an expert of RCA when you're through here today in about 60 minutes or so, if you want to hang out with me that long. I encourage you to do so because this is quite the good training and it's very simple. And as I like to say here in my logo, simplicity breeds compliance. Anyway, you should leave here from this training with a solid understanding of what it takes to complete an investigation. But if you don't, just start the video over. All right. So here is what I like to do for introductions. Like if you're at a corporate place, you're a corporate owner, what site do you work at? What's your name and position? What is or what will be your role in the quality management system? What expectations do you have of me? I write those down so that I make sure I meet them. And how experienced are you? Look, for any budding instructors out there, I like to do this and go through some introductions. This tells you a lot about the students, and you may decide to alter the way you teach the class based on the experience level of those that are in the class with you. By the way, everyone usually thinks they do not know anything about how to do an RCA. So I usually like to challenge that assertion when they answer number 5. It sounds something like this. Okay, great. So you're brand new to this. Did you encounter any small issues you had to overcome so far today? Like, how easy or hard was it to get your kid to school? Anything go wrong while you were making your breakfast? What about with your normal routine and getting into work? This usually leads to some quip about some minor issue they solved, and you can spin it as, see, that's a root cause analysis right there. Um, I like to set some rules for the road, right? Like, hey man, don't multitask. You're here because well, you need to be here. And by the way, look at number 5. Hopefully you have some fun today. A really good root cause analysis instructor really understands all aspects of the business, and that's what makes for an engaging class. When staff in the audience have questions about actual problems they're facing in their day-to-day life, and you, with your amazing amount of experience, can give them answers to those problems. That's the most engaging kind of class, and that's why I take time always to go get to know the business before I put on a class. All right. Anyway, then I would cover our objectives. Our objectives are to let's explain when this company requires a root cause analysis from a deviation. We want to introduce root cause analysis standard terms. We want to introduce a process flow and stages of RCA. Then we'll perform it. We'll apply it to the case of the moldy oranges. It's a non-industry case. I think you're going to find it to be a lot of fun, right? And then I will lay out some more expectations depending on if we're in person, virtual, or a bit of both. Okay. Now, here's the money slide, right? This is the root cause analysis training distilled with bottom line on top messaging. Let me orient you to this slide just a little bit. On the far left is the process step. In the middle is the method by which that process will be completed, and then some additional details to help understand. So this is the money slide. This is a distilled view of the overall training, which I like to highlight with all of the trainees at the very beginning of the class on what they'll be learning today and why. I've found that this really sets the stage and engages the class immediately. No one's ever done this before. What are all these things? This is what I'm actually here to learn today. So maybe I know something about some of these things, but maybe I don't know a lot of the other things. So I'll tune in whenever I feel more like tuning in. I think you can see what I mean. What you have here, by the way, is the American Society of Quality method for how to arrive to actionable root causes. So if you've joined some big company and this is the process they have, they like to take credit, they being that big company, that they created this process. But the reality is that's not true. Okay. You just had a smart global program owner who had American Society of Quality reference materials and brought to life a version of that. All right. So what you have here on the screen is a logical and multi-method way of arriving to a root cause or root causes. It must be followed in this sequence for it to work correctly each time it's used. In other words, do not skip any of the steps and don't guess at a root cause. This is a science-based way of getting to a root cause, and if performed in the correct sequence, you will always get to an actionable root cause. So what is the process method and what are some other details we should consider? The first step of the process is to gather data, understand the data, learn from it or gain insights from the data, and document the event. We do this through the methods of interviewing and the 4W2H methodology, which is who, what, when, where, how much, how many. Note, it doesn't include a fifth W, which would be why. Why is root cause. Next, identify potential causal factors and then confirm them. We do this by the method of brainstorming within the framework of 5 M's. So there's 2 methods there. Brainstorm within 5 M's. 5 M's are machinery, method, materials, environment, which is commonly known as Mother Nature, and manpower. And yes, there are other M's, but I like 5 M's versus 6 or 7, okay? Then analyze for root cause on all confirmed causal factors. They're no longer potential. You've confirmed them through some method, which I'll explain later. And then analyze for root cause using the 5Y method. All root causes receive a corrective action or a preventive action. So this by itself, if you listen to nothing else in this training, this by itself could get you through to do a root cause. You don't believe me? You can go ahead and try. So you might be asking yourself, cool, Mike, why am I still watching you on this video? And also root cause analysis, or whatever, what's in it for me? Well, what's in it for you is that when we perform a thorough root cause analysis, we can implement the right corrective actions or preventive actions, thus preventing deviating events from occurring in the first place, which also ensures we're not impacting patients. And it saves the company a lot of money. If you read Quality by Delitala Volume 2, the definitive guide on deviations, you know that deviations are very costly to firms. If you prevent the deviations from reoccurring, then you are saving the firm money. Also, this might be what's really in it for you. Staff who do this well are quite often recognized for being a leader in their organization, and they get promoted faster. Think about that for a second while I take a sip of water. All right, we thought about it. All right. Also, it's required by law. And up on the screen is what ICH Q10 says, which is my go-to source for all things compliance. The pharmaceutical company should have a system for implementing CAPA resulting from deviation investigations. A structured approach to the investigation process, that word is intentional, process. So in order to comply to ICH Q10, you need to have a process used with the objective of determining root cause. I would debate and have debated with risk-averse heads of quality that deviation management is separate from investigation management, but they are connected. Right there, it says you need a structured approach to the investigation process to get to a root cause. So by law, you need a system and a process, a standard operating procedure that describes how to get to a root cause. You can't debate me. It says it right there. It goes on to say the level of effort and formality and documentation should be commensurate with the level of risk. This means you need a risk-based approach to your deviation management program. And goes on to say CAPA methodology should result in product and process improvements and enhanced product and process understanding. So therefore, deviations are classified using a risk-based approach, minor, major, critical, based on the risk, major, critical, get CAPA in order to improve product and process or to enhance understanding. Hopefully this makes sense. So how did we get here? Well, we initiated a deviation. It was classified as minor, and therefore, as a minor deviation in the risk-based approach, you don't need to worry about getting to a root cause, and you don't need to worry about getting to a CAPA. That's only true, though, if you have a robust trending program. And then you can see Quality by Delitala, Volume 4, The Art and Science of Deviation Trending, okay, for the most compliant deviation trending program on planet Earth. If you don't have a robust trend program, though, I would go ahead and do an abbreviated root cause investigation in a minor deviation so that you still get the CAPAs. Regardless, all deviations should be trended within the deviation as well as in the deviation trending program. Next row, deviation is initiated, classified as major or critical, and an RCA investigation is always required when the deviation is major or critical, even if it's inherent variability in your manufacturing process, such as with immunotherapy or vaccine manufacturing processes. By the way, what is root cause analysis? It is a process, therefore being compliant to the law, of determining the underlying causes of a deviation in order to identify appropriate CAPA as part of overall deviation reduction or continuous improvement. I hope you really, really enjoy that definition. Now, look, you can't get through a foundational course or a fundamentals course without having a base understanding of definitions. So in normal classes that I would teach this to in large pharmaceutical firms, there would be 10 more definitions that go with this. But since simplicity breeds compliance, we're only going to cover a few so that you understand the difference and that by the end of it, can apply it to actual root cause analysis. First, we start off with a causal factor. Causal factor is an immediate or parent factors associated with the event that cause the event to exist, okay? The event doesn't exist without it, in other words. Root cause is the underlying reason for the deviation. Probable root cause is a factor or combination of factors that cause an abnormal event, but cannot be fully verified by objective evidence, right? So you've ruled everything else out. And the only thing left is this thing that maybe probably happened, but you can't actually verify it. And since you don't have any other root causes, you give it a fancy name of probable root cause. Therefore, root causes and probable root causes must have corrective action. Okay? I hope you like my puddle here. That's what that is. It's a puddle. To help facilitate learning of these concepts, I'm going to please consider like the following scenario. So I, Michael A. Delitala, am walking through a hallway where I slip and fall from a puddle of water. What's the causal factor? The puddle is the causal factor because it was the immediate thing that allowed the event to happen. Okay, cool, Mike. So what's the root cause? We don't know. We don't know why the puddle of water was there. Therefore, we have to investigate it to find the reason why, the underlying reason. Does it make sense? Play it back in your mind for a second, or rewind the video. The puddle, here is the basic path for root cause analysis. There are a couple decision points you have to make. I cover this in detail in the following slides. But if you weren't able to find any causal factors in this step here, like you weren't able to confirm any of them and you don't have a probable root cause, then you have to move on into what's called an advanced path root cause analysis. So the basic path is linear left to right. It's simple and simplicity breeds compliance. And 99% of the times you should be able to get to an actionable root cause if you actually followed the process in the sequence of events that it matters. Okay. So what I just said again was 99% of the time you will get to a root cause following the basic path, right? If you feel like you need to get to the advanced path root cause analysis, you should contact your site process owner, or your global program owner, or your quality assurance approver just to verify, because again, this process through its science-based way always gets to an actionable root cause 99% of the time. That's always. Sorry about that. Okay. Oh, man. Thank you for that. Sorry, folks. Okay. So this phase of the basic RCA path, having a technical difficulty. 1 second. There we go. Um, this phase, the collect and analyze data, as I previously mentioned, includes two foundational methods, 4W2H plus context and interviewing. It should be obvious, but capturing facts and data associated to deviating event is critical to effective root cause analysis. Collection of data should occur as close to the time of the event as possible and at the scene of the incident, if possible. Ideally, this already occurred when documenting a deviation description. However, as it relates to a thorough root cause analysis and investigation, additional facts and data collection may need to occur. Okay, just some context for you. I'm not going to cover this in great detail, but in the training and in the book, there are some things for your consideration, right? Some points to consider when trying to obtain data. For example, we'll go through one. We'll go to this one here. You may need to interview witnesses, staff involved, staff notified, and staff who made decisions, and subject matter experts as soon as practical. And sources for such places like who do I figure out who to interview? You could go to a deviation record, batch records, testing records, or management, right? All of those things should be documented in the record and the record of like batch records or deviation, so on and so forth, right? There'll be initials there, in other words. Then you figure out who is that person who signed here, who also wrote the deviation number to where the deviating event occurred, right? Things like this. Data collection of the who, what, when, where, how much, and how often plays a key role. Driving to the answers to these questions is in an organized fashion is important to ensure appropriate rigor and thoroughness to capture relevant facts, data, and information. And think about this too. When used appropriately, this method, it drives deep learning. It drives deep understanding about the deviating event, plus additional details that might be needed later as the investigation team moves through the basic path of the RCA process. Okay, and here are more considerations for you, right? It's kind of a recipe. You can use these tables as a recipe to write literally down on a piece of paper who was involved, who observed it, who was impacted, who made decisions, who was notified. I think you get the idea. Interviewing is a key part of collecting data. So interviewing witnesses and decision-making staff and subject matter experts based on the scope of the deviating event is significant and a critical part of collecting and analyzing data. Interviews are completed to collect initial background details that may not have already been captured as part of a deviation description. Any new details learned during the interview process might later be used as clues when brainstorming about potential causal factors or when confirming them. You know that this step is complete when there are no more witnesses left to interview, okay? The interviewing technique that is most effective it's funnel-based interviewing. That's what the funnel on your screen is there for. So at the top of the funnel, it's wide open. It's open, therefore you're asking open-ended questions. Example, how are the materials charged into the manufacturing process? This allows the person being interviewed to speak freely, like whatever is on their mind for that answer to the question, they just throw it at you and you write it all down, right? So these kinds of questions, these being open-ended, draws out more thoughtful responses. Closed-ended questions, therefore mimicking the shape of the bottom of the funnel, closed-ended questions give you yes or no responses so that you can confirm what you heard is correct. Example, are there specific instructions in an SOP describing the requirements to charge materials into the manufacturing process? Response should be yes, and therefore you've provided clarity or confirmed what you heard. Then we identify potential causal factors. Notice the word there is potential, right? Remember our definition for a causal factor? Immediate or apparent factors associated with the event that cause the event to exist. For a typical major or critical deviation, there are or will be multiple causal factors. Note the term potential because we haven't confirmed them. So these are things we are brainstorming within the framework of 5Ms to identify that they potentially allowed this event to exist. And it's not actual causal factors until we confirm it. I hope this is making sense. Here is that framework within the 5Ms and definitions of each 5M. So the 5Ms, again, are method, materials, mother nature, machinery or equipment, and people. And brainstorming is a team discussion to generate ideas on all of the realistic possibilities that allowed the event to exist. 5Ms, in theory, represents areas from end to end where causal factors occur or exist. And by evaluating all potential areas, we are considering the entire process that may have contributed to the event or allowed the event to exist. And why are we considering all of this from end to end? Because we want to prevent, from any perspective in totality, we want to prevent this from ever happening again. This costs money, it has risk to patient and to product. The 5M framework, if you're at a mature company, is contained in an investigation template. You're also free to use an Ishikawa or fishbone diagram. It doesn't matter what you use to me. It just matters that you've covered all of the possible potential causal factors in your investigation. Next, we make a decision. Is this a real? Is the causal factor more than just potential? Is it real? All right, so we've brainstormed within the framework of 5M, and then we decide if it's actual or realistic. You can confirm a causal factor. You can make the decision that, yes, this is real. If it is based on fact and not an opinion or speculation or a hypothesis, it provides a logical explanation to the event occurring. It can be confirmed from data or testing or from eyewitness accounts. And yeah, that's basically it. All right. Sorry, technical issues again. Too many distractions. All right. Now, here is what the actual investigation template should look like related to what you identified being potential, the decision you made on whether or not it is real. So yes is confirmed causal factor, no is it's not potentially a causal factor, and probable is you don't understand yet, but you treat it like yes, right? So you want to also keep the unconfirmed causal factors documented in the summary. It takes credit for the work that you and the team did and explains with justification why you decided it wasn't a reality. So one more time, if the potential causal factor is confirmed as an actual causal factor, you'll document yes in that third column. If a probable cause is identified but is not confirmed, you treat it as a yes but document it as probable. And then if it was not confirmed whatsoever, you would list no, again, with your justification or your rationale. Now that we have confirmed causal factors, it means we need to analyze it for root cause. Most organizations will use 5 whys at this point. I think it makes a lot of sense. Think about how you've been gathering data, distilling the data, getting insights from the data, brainstorming about the data, leading to decisions about what a confirmed causal factor is. So now you can very simply perform your root cause analysis on the why. Why was this? Why did this happen? That's the basic question. Why did this happen? 5 why method at this point is very simple and useful. It helps you quickly refine the causal factor analysis by driving the analysis deeper to the underlying deficiencies. Remember our definition for root cause? The underlying deficiency. The intent of a 5 why method is to document a cause and effect logic. And you keep asking the question why until it is no longer reasonable or no longer makes sense to ask another why. I usually get a question here. How do you know when to stop asking the question why? You know because you've reached the actionable level, right? So, for example, why was the SOP deficient? Well, that's not a reasonable question to ask. It's not a reasonable question to ask because that document went through a review and approval cycle. And if you ask the question, why was the document insufficient, you would actually be indicting your entire document control process. So you end your analysis, let's say, with method, procedure, procedure deficient in that the sequence of the events was out of order. Therefore, your corrective action will be to put them into the right order. I hope this makes sense. So in the investigation template, you finally conclude with the confirmed causal factor or probable cause, and then the root cause from the 5 why method. So this just shows you, you left your no responses on another page, and now you have your yes responses on this page, and therefore this is what you now will be focusing on for the rest of your root cause analysis, these root causes. Then we do a kappa. So you got your root causes. Now we do a kappa. And sorry, I don't give you kappa training in this video or in that book because that's another volume coming out soon. So stay tuned for that. Next, we'll cover a non-industry example so that you can tie all of these concepts together, and then you can consider yourself ready to do a root cause analysis. And only then, once you gain the experiences of it, can you call yourself an expert. So I present to you the case of the moldy oranges. And this is a true story. A married couple, they own a home in Southern California. They have a nice kitchen in this home. Every week, they go to the local Gelson's or Trader Joe's and pick up some fruit. Quite often, the missus of the couple loves to have fresh oranges on hand. A couple of days go by and ew. Mrs. goes to grab an orange and immediately pulls back when she sees the gross and moldy orange. The first thought in her mind is, how can this be? We just purchased the oranges at the co-op grocery store, who is known for having fresh produce. Mrs. calls in Mr. and says, look at this. How is this possible? The Mr., having a solid background in root cause analysis for 30 years at pharma companies, says, don't worry, babe. Let's do some RCA together to figure this out. The first thing Mr. does is consult the Google machine. He asks, how long does it take for oranges to become moldy when sitting at ambient conditions in a controlled environment? Per Google, oranges on a counter at ambient conditions should last up to 1 week, which, given the worst case scenario, we interpreted that to mean 5 days, and we're well within those 5 days. We then start a brainstorming activity within the framework of 5 M's to identify potential causal factors. kind of our problem statement, although I don't like to use the word problem when it comes to investigations, is what is apparent or immediate that allowed the orange to be moldy within 2 days? Hmm. So we examine the schedule of heating and cooling the environment. We rule it out because it's been verified that the HVAC has worked as intended at the right temperature in the house always. We examine the materials. It seems that only the oranges sitting against the walls of the bowl turn moldy, yet the ones in the middle of the bowl are fresh as they should be. This is a clue. This is very intriguing. What does it mean? We begin to ask ourselves. It leads us to examine each other's morning routine or our method. I'm a protein bar or protein shake with an electrolyte drink in the morning. So having nothing to do with the fruit or the bowl or being anywhere near it. The missus will toast a bagel and make a caffeine drink every morning. Hmm. She will toast a bagel and make a caffeine drink. All right. We suddenly realize that the toaster is pressed against the fruit bowl. Science says that heat transfers from the toaster to the bowl, warming the oranges every morning, thus making them moldy because the heat transfers from the wood transfers to the orange degrades. So, knowing this, we change our method and the environment. Our method is we will do an inspection first. We'll examine the fruit bowl's location before toasting, and then in our environment, ensuring that no appliances are in contact. In case it's not clear, the causal factor was that the toaster was applying heat to the oranges. The root cause was that we had a method that allowed for such a placement, and the environment was the underlying reason for the oranges to be moldy. I really hope you enjoy this real life scenario of the case of the moldy oranges and applying all of our what we just learned today in root cause analysis. Well, folks, that is the end. I like to end by saying simplicity breeds compliance. My references today was ICH Q10 and my own book, Quality by Delitala, Volume 3, Root Cause Analysis. You may like to know that I have all of these other books and like 5 or 6 more on the way. So stay tuned. Look me up on Amazon. Um, Reach out if you need any training or consulting needs. It's been fun. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. I hope you enjoyed it. Please, please give me some feedback if you so desire. Take care.